my beautiful internet friends. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. Am I only wearing this giant sweater because I'm secretly wearing my pajamas underneath this and don't want to change? That may be true, but here we are. So in today's video, I am doing my May reading wrap up. We are going to talk about all of the books that I've read this month. So without further ado, let's jump on in. And I was vlogging for all of May, so you will see my full thoughts and reviews in an upcoming video. So the first book that I read was Gravity. This is an hockey sports romance. In the story, we are following a man who is a very well-known hockey player. He is struggling with his identity. He is a gay man and he is trying to come to terms with that, but he's also very much in the closet. He goes to an all-stars retreat, meets this other man who he happens to admire, and we follow the progression of their relationship. I really love this one. I thought that it was very beautifully balanced. I love the exploration of accepting his queer identity, as well as the way that these two kind of explore what the relationship dynamics are. And because they are both players on this hockey team, the sports element was actually a really heavy element of this story, and I really enjoyed this. This ends up going somewhere that made me cry. I will leave that video linked in this one so you can have the full experience and know more about what was happening, but it made me sob. I really liked this and I gave this 4 stars. And I finally read Daphne by Josh Malerman. This is a book that I've had on my TBR for a long time, and this is a story about a women's basketball team in high school, and these players all come together, and there is this urban legend that they hear about a woman named Daphne who used to live in their town. And really this is more of an exploration of anxiety and OCD, because you're not supposed to think about Daphne or say Daphne's name, and if you do, bad things happen. And we're following that story of this young girl who hears the Daphne legend, the way that she is struggling with her own anxiety and OCD and intrusive thoughts, but also some of the things that are happening in this town, because this is still a horror story. I like this one. My issue is that I found it confusing at times. It was kind of hard to follow. I wanted it to be scarier, but I really liked the switching points of view that we got for each of the characters, understood the metaphor of Daphne as anxiety, thought that the exploration of that was pretty well done. Ultimately, I didn't love it just because it was okay for me, but also there's a detective in here, and I left this story feeling like ACAB. Truly ACAB. I think I told you. Daphne was a 3-star read. Then I read Caught Up by Liz Tomford, which was the 3rd book in the Windy City series. I loved The Right Move, and Caught Up was just okay for me. I spoke about this in depth in my sports romance reading vlog, so I won't talk about it too much in this video. Just know that I had some issues with the narration of the audiobook just because the characters were constantly fucking chuckling, constantly. But beyond that, even though I like the dynamics between all of the characters in here and this kind of found family elements to the story, I didn't believe that Miller and Kai were soulmates and really wasn't rooting for them throughout the entire story. I wasn't against them, but I wasn't like, oh yeah, you two should be together. I didn't understand why they were. I know that I'm in the minority with feeling that way, so take that with a grain of salt. I was already annoyed by the audiobook, but for me, I was just left feeling meh about this. Swift and Saddled is a cowboy romance that you're going to see me talk about in an upcoming reading vlog. Just know that this is the story of a woman who I believe is an interior designer who gets this big job that she's hoping is going to be her big break, renovating this old farmhouse, except that her first night there, she goes to this bar and accidentally kind of hooks up with who she later realizes is her boss, and this is their love story. I'm going to keep my review here super simple and say that I appreciated elements of the story and I liked the characters individually themselves. I just didn't feel like they were fully fleshed out in the way that I was expecting them to be, and that we're told certain things about them, but we don't get a full exploration of how those things are defining moments in their characters or how it influences them in their day-to-day life. And much like Caught Up, they were fine together, but I didn't understand why they were together, and I think that might be a me problem, so ultimately this was a 3-star book. And I decided I want it to be a little silly goofy. I want it to go back to my roots. So yes, I did go and read a sci-fi romance. In fact, I would say this is a sci-fi monster romance. Say hello to American Werewolf in Space. American Werewolf in Space is a story about this woman who gets abducted from a jail cell, and she is abducted with her best friend. And they end up on this spaceship with these kind of like shark alien creatures who keep them in a cage, and it's very clear that they are about to be sold. Except what these shark alien creatures don't realize is one of the women that they kidnapped, our main female character, is a werewolf because they don't know that werewolves exist. So she ends up shifting, kills every alien on the ship, saves the women, and except that she goes to like this more confined area of the ship, and she finds this massive hulking monster. He kind of looks like Venom. He does scare her, but she's a werewolf and they have fated mates and like mates, so she smells him and like sees him and gets this kind of tingling. She's like, that's interesting. And when she does release him, because he's also a prisoner, she smells him and it's like, yep, that's my mate. And you are following their story as they try to navigate the situation of being on this spaceship, why they were taken, and all of the chaos that ensues. I really love this. I think it's not often that we see a heroine who is 6'6", I believe, just a solid wall of muscle, super badass, and is often the hero of the story. Love that element of this. I gave it 4 stars. It was just the fun, silly, goofy time that I wanted. The only reason that it wasn't 5-star is that it wasn't my perfect read, and I truly try to reserve my 5 stars for my perfect reads, but I had a lot of fun with this. Humor can get quite dark, and just know there are some gruesome scenes in here. I did vlog it, so rest assured that you will see that in an upcoming video. And American Werewolf in Space actually ends on a cliffhanger, so I did immediately read the sequel to this book, Zero Dark Blood Thirsty. 1, that's a very hard title to remember. 2, that's the sequel, so I can't tell you what happens. It's a direct follow-up of the cliffhanger of the end of book 2. Just know that this is very much about an intergalactic war, space battles, and all of the horrific things that are happening. Our main female character is once again a badass, saving everyone. She is quite vicious, just so that she is very, very vicious. Again, some things that happen in here might actually turn your stomach, but I did enjoy this. I enjoyed it less than book 1 just because this one was less romance heavy. It was very much a sci-fi about this intergalactic war, but when the romance came in, it was fun, and I really loved seeing the further development of our main female character in this story because you learn more about her, and she's like, because I'm like this giant person, I'm so like strong and amazing in battle that I must like be this way, and she's like, actually, I like love the color pink and I love all things girly and feminine and all these things, and I should be like allowed to love those things. And I just really loved this character. I think it is a fun role reversal of here, but also like I said earlier, this series could very much also be considered a monster romance because her mate is one hell of a being. I did in fact read The Hollow Dead, which is book 4 of the Grave Whisperer series by Darcy Coates. And is it Grave Whisperers or Grave Keepers? I can never remember because I always call it the Whispering Dead series. Anyway, this is book 4 in a series that I have absolutely loved. Of all of Darcy's books, I think that this one is definitely the coziest. It is about this woman who has amnesia and she can speak to spirits. She doesn't know that, obviously, because she has amnesia until she starts having encounters with ghosts, and you're following her and her group of friends as she tries to help the spirits of this town solve some mysteries, but also has a lot of other really wild things happening, including the reason that she has amnesia and what exactly she was running from. Because this is the penultimate book in this series, I really can't tell you what happens in here whatsoever. Just know that it continues to be very cozy and fun. I loved their adventures that they went on. It's not the scariest, and it definitely is a stepping stone to the conclusion of this story, and for that reason I give it 4 stars. And finally, for books that I finished, I did read This Is How You Lose the Time War finally, because I was working on reading down my physical TBR. You know, we're trying to make progress. So this is how you lose a Time War I can only describe as time traveling spy agents, but sapphic, which should sound amazing. I've had very high hope for this. Unfortunately, it wasn't my perfect book just because of the very, very flowery writing combined with the extremely high science. Like, the things that were happening were very confusing to understand. Combine those two things together and my brain was like, I don't understand what's happening. I could not process anything that was happening in this story. Some of the scenes in here were quite beautiful. I love the letters between our two female characters, the way that they speak to each other, and the information and insight we get for their individual worlds. I liked the ending a lot. If I reread it, could I? Probably, but I wasn't invested enough to do that, and so it was a 3-star book. And I only had one DNF in the month of May, but I want to hear your thoughts on this and whether or not I should consider it a DNF. This is Tapestry by Karen Ramsey, and this is a story. It's a historical romance, kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but Beauty and the Beast crossed with the Man in the Iron Mask. So we have this woman who had this childhood crush. She was super into her best friend, but he's older than her. He obviously just viewed her as a child, but she very much had like a childhood crush on him. And then he goes off to war and he is horribly burned while he's there. And so he wears a mask and people kind of stay away from him. He becomes very surly and angry and he just kind of stays to himself. And she loves him and that was always her friend, and she doesn't like that he is self-isolating. So she sneaks into his home pretending to be the maid and trying to get closer to him. He doesn't realize this because his eyesight was also damaged during that burn, the explosion that burned him. So they are just kind of getting together and it was fine. It was 3 stars, very much just them in the castle falling in love. And then the book ends. It says end of book 1, but technically we're still in the same story because now we have book 2, which is the second half of what happens after they get together. I'm counting this as a DNF because I read book 1 in that book, but it's not actually separated. It's all put into one book and one story. So DNF at 50%. Or did I technically finish book 1 and just choose not to read the sequel? I don't know. Besties, that does bring us to the end of the video. I was going to do reading stats, but honestly, I didn't read enough to really have interesting statistics for you. But what I will say is you can see it was a pretty mediocre reading month if I choose to view it that way, because most of my books were in that 3 to 4 star range. I didn't really have anything outside of that, which means I didn't really have super strong opinions about anything that I read, but I could choose to view that as like a mediocre reading month or a mid reading month, or I can choose to say I liked everything that I read. To some extent or another, I liked everything that I read, even if I didn't have any 5 stars, and I'm going to choose to view it that way. With that said, besties, we have come to the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite book of May was, and if you want to leave me a comment, you can leave me a little puppy emoji or a dog emoji for the wrapping paper behind me. Let me know that you got to the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing, and I'm going to see you in my next video on Wednesday. Bye!